The air in the negotiation chamber was a carefully engineered lie. It smelled of nothing, tasted of nothing, and held a temperature so neutral it was noticeable only in its profound absence of character. It was the perfect environment for stripping away distractions, for laying bare the raw, twitching nerves of interstellar diplomacy. And in this sterile void, Ambassador Elena Vasquez was a master surgeon. "Let us be clear, Ambassador Kethmer," she said, her voice a polished instrument of calm reason that somehow carried the sharp edge of a blade. "The Terran Federation is not requesting access to the Cerulean Drift. We are offering you a partnership in its prosperity. A partnership from which, I must add, the Zephyrian Consortium stands to gain far more than we do." The gleaming obsidian table, Ambassador Kethmer shifted, his slender, four-fingered hands trembling slightly where they rested. He was a being of immense age and dignity, his species known for their delicate physiologies and their cultural reverence for harmony. His skin, a pale, almost translucent lavender, seemed to thin under the pressure, revealing the faint, pulsing network of azure veins beneath. His respiratory gills, located just below his clavicle, fluttered with a rhythm that was becoming increasingly erratic. "Ambassador Vasquez," Kethmer began, his voice a soft, fluting melody that was the auditory equivalent of shimmering silk. "Harmony is built on balance, not on disproportionate gain. The Cerulean Drift is sovereign Zephyrian space. For generations, we have been its custodians. The hyperlanthanides within its asteroid fields are a sacred trust. A sacred trust that has sat dormant for 400 of your years," Vasquez countered smoothly, leaning forward just enough to shrink the perceived space between them. "We have the technology to extract them safely. We have the markets that crave them. You have a flagging economy and an increasing reliance on galactic subsidies. The data is incontrovertible." She didn't raise her voice. She never did. Her method was far more insidious. It was a slow, methodical dismantling of her opponent's position, brick by brick, using their own history, their own culture, their own fears against them. Her aide, Marcus Thorne, shifted uncomfortably behind her, his face a mask of anxious concern. He had seen this performance before, but never directed at a species as notoriously fragile as the Zephyrians. "Data does not account for the spirit, Ambassador," Kethmer rasped, one hand moving to his chest. The gills fluttered faster. "To exploit the drift is to disrupt the cosmic flow. It would be a wound. A wound that can be healed with the balm of unprecedented economic growth," Vasquez said, her eyes narrowing. She accessed a file on her personal datapad, and a holographic image of a document shimmered into existence above the table. "Let us speak of wounds. I have here the record of the Genar trade dispute, Standard Cycle 73. The Zephyrian Consortium conceded exclusive rights to 3 nebulae after the Genar threatened to blockade your primary trade route. You chose capitulation over confrontation." Kethmer's large, dark eyes widened. "That was a matter of preserving peace. We chose de-escalation. The Genar called it a victory. The rest of the galaxy called it a weakness," Vasquez stated, her voice devoid of any emotion. "Then there was the matter of the Cathar pirates. For 10 cycles they preyed on your merchant fleets. You offered them tribute instead of resistance. Another wound, Ambassador. Another concession born from a philosophical reluctance to assert yourselves." Marcus shot her a look of pure panic. This was beyond negotiation. This was a vivisection. He could see the physical effect her words were having on the old Zephyrian. The lavender hue of his skin was deepening to a bruised violet, and a fine sheen of sweat beaded on his high, domed forehead. You twist our nature into a weapon against us," Kethmer whispered. His breath was coming in shallow, shuddering gasps. His aides, 2 younger Zephyrians standing behind him, began to murmur to each other in their melodic tongue, their own gills fluttering in alarm. "I am merely presenting a pattern of behavior, Ambassador," Vasquez continued, relentless. "A pattern that humanity, as a potential partner, must consider. We are investing billions of souls, advanced extraction platforms, and our political capital into this venture. We cannot build such a house on a foundation that has historically crumbled at the first sign of pressure. We require assurances. We require a partner who will stand with us, not simply flow away." She leaned back, a picture of relaxed confidence, letting the silence stretch. It was her signature move. The final, crushing weight of her argument, followed by a silence that dared her opponent to refute it, knowing they had been systematically stripped of the means to do so. But this time, the silence was different. It was not filled with reluctant consideration. It was filled with a choked, wet sound. Ambassador Kethmer made a noise like a crushed reed. His eyes, wide with shock and pain, fixed on Vasquez. His slender body went rigid, his hands clawing at his chest. The elaborate silken robes he wore seemed to swallow him as he slumped sideways in his chair, a final, despairing flute-like note escaping his lips before he slid to the floor. For a single, frozen second, the room was utterly still. Then chaos erupted. The Zephyrian aides screamed, a high-pitched, harmonic sound of pure terror. They rushed to their fallen ambassador, their movements frantic and uncoordinated. "Medic!" Marcus yelled, leaping to his feet. "Get a medical team in here now." Vasquez remained seated, her face a blank canvas. Her eyes, however, were not blank. They were calculating, processing, analyzing this new, unexpected variable. The emotion she felt was not horror or remorse, but a cold, sharp spike of annoyance. This complicated things. The doors to the chamber hissed open, and a human medical team, stationed outside for just such a possibility given the Zephyrians' known fragility, rushed in with an anti-grav stretcher and diagnostic equipment. "What happened?" the chief medical officer demanded, kneeling beside Kethmer. "He just collapsed," Marcus stammered, running a hand through his hair. "We were talking." Zephyrian aides were now wailing, a sound that was both beautiful and heart-wrenching. One of them turned to Vasquez, its dark eyes streaming tears. "You did this," it keened. "Your words were poison. You killed him." Vasquez finally rose, smoothing down the front of her perfectly tailored jacket. She looked down at the scene, the frantic medics, the weeping aides, the still form of the old ambassador, with the detached air of a general surveying an unfortunate but necessary battlefield casualty. "Ambassador Kethmer has suffered a medical episode," she announced, her voice cutting through the panic. "Our medical staff is providing the best possible care. Inform the council that the ambassador experienced a health crisis during negotiations. Use precise language. No speculation." Stared at her aghast. "Elena, he had a heart attack. Because of you, we have to do nothing, Marcus," she said, her voice dropping to a low, intense whisper for his ears alone. "We control the narrative. He was elderly. His health was known to be poor. This is a tragedy, but it is not a crime. Now get me a secure line to the Citadel. I need to speak to Speaker Thrax before the Zephyrians do." It was already too late. As the medical team stabilized Kethmer for transport, a small, insistent red light began to flash on the main diplomatic console in the corner of the room. It was a light Marcus had only ever seen in simulations. It was a light that no one in active diplomatic service ever wanted to see. It was a light that signaled a catastrophic failure. On the Galactic Council Citadel, a station of polished chrome and captive starlight orbiting a gravitationally stable nexus, Administrator Lin of the Xylos race felt a tremor in the very air. Xylosians were beings of coherent gas, contained within elegant crystalline suits, and they were exceptionally sensitive to shifts in energy and intent. The tremor was followed by a cascade of alerts on her console, each one coded with a higher priority than the last. She floated toward the console, her crystalline form humming with concern. The primary alert was from the Sol System Embassy. She scanned the initial report: Zephyrian Ambassador Kethmer, cardiac event, critical condition. Negotiations with Terran Federation Ambassador Vasquez. Lin's gaseous form swirled, the Xylosian equivalent of a sharp intake of breath. Vasquez, of course. The human was infamous. A brilliant, brutal negotiator who treated diplomacy like a zero-sum game. She cross-referenced the incident with standing council directives. Kethmer's official medical file flagged him as physiologically fragile, Category 3. Any diplomatic incident resulting in his incapacitation automatically triggered a series of sub-protocols. Lin's manipulators, extensions of hard light projected from her suit, danced across the console. Then she saw it. A final, buried flag in the alert packet, triggered by the combination of the species involved, the nature of the incapacitation, and the subject of the deadlocked negotiation. It was a flag she had been trained to recognize but prayed she would never have to act upon. A cold, deep dread settled within her swirling form. She had no choice. Her mandate was clear. With a trembling manipulator, she activated the relay. A single, encrypted pulse of data, containing no information other than a coded sequence of prime numbers, shot from her console toward the shielded inner sanctum of the council speaker. The pulse had only one meaning. Protocol Omega has been invoked. Speaker Thrax's private chambers were a place of profound silence, insulated from the ceaseless hum of the Citadel. Thrax was a Cathar, an ancient, insected species whose members could live for millennia. His body was a towering construction of chitinous plates, spindly limbs, and multifaceted eyes that saw in spectrums other races couldn't even conceive. He had presided over the council for 3 centuries, a tenure marked by stability and wisdom. The chime that echoed in his chamber was not auditory, but psionic, a clean, pure note that bypassed the senses and resonated directly in the mind. It was the summons. He rose from his meditative stance, his 6 long limbs unfolding with a grace that defied his size. He entered the speaker's conclave, a circular room where the ceiling was a live star map of the galaxy. Already, holographic forms were shimmering into existence around the central dais. Ambassador Sges of the Eskar Confederacy, a sleek, reptilian being whose forked tongue tasted the air for chemical and emotional shifts. High Logician Valkor of the Lithoid Hegemony, a crystalline entity whose thoughts were as structured and unyielding as its body. And the Zalosian, Administrator Lin, her form swirling with agitated light. Speaker, she pulsed, her thoughts laced with urgency. An incident in the Sol system. Zephyrian Ambassador, a young, fiery diplomat named Lyraza, materialized next, her lavender form almost vibrating with fury. Speaker Thrax, the humans have attacked Ambassador Kethmer. He is near death. This is an act of aggression, an assassination. Calm yourself, Ambassador, Thrax's voice boomed, not with volume but with a depth that seemed to press down on the room. What has occurred? The details came in a frantic flood from Lyraza, interspersed with cold, factual data from Administrator Lin. The negotiation, the pressure, Vasquez's tactics, Kethmer's collapse, cardiac arrest, High Logician Valkor stated, its voice a synthesized, monotone hum. The human ambassador did not physically touch the Zephyrian. Causality is correlational, not definitive. The Zephyrian's pre-existing medical condition is a primary variable. Variable the human exploited. Sges hissed, its sibilant voice full of predatory interest. Vasquez is known for this. SSG pushes until her opponent breaks, mentally or in this case physically. It is her signature. It is an act of barbarism, Lyraza insisted, her form shimmering. The Zephyrian Consortium demands justice. We demand the immediate censure and removal of Ambassador Vasquez. We demand reparations. Speaker Thrax held up one of his spindly, 3-jointed hands. A wave of calming psionic energy washed through the conclave. Justice will be considered, but first, we must address the signal I received from Administrator Lin, the signal that convened this emergency session. He turned his great, multifaceted eyes upon the Zalosian. Confirm it. Administrator Lin's form seemed to shrink. Confirmed, Speaker. Based on Directive 742, subsection Gamma, the conditions have been met. A Category 3 diplomatic failure involving a species with known physiological vulnerabilities and a species rated on the High Aggression Index during a negotiation of critical economic importance. Protocol Omega is indicated. A chilling silence fell over the conclave. Even the enraged Lyraza seemed stunned into quietude. The name of the protocol was a thing of myth, a ghost story told to junior diplomats. A doomsday device for diplomacy itself. High Logician Valkor was the first to speak. Protocol Omega is an extreme, disproportionate response. It has not been activated in over 900 standard cycles. It was designed for situations involving kinetic warfare or biological attacks, not a stress-induced cardiac event. Protocol's activation criteria are not interpretive, Thrax countered, his voice grim. They are absolute. They were written in the aftermath of the Signian meltdown to prevent a single point of diplomatic failure from cascading into open war. The logic is to immediately and completely quarantine the crisis before sentiment and politics can ignite it. Lyraza whispered, her anger momentarily replaced by confusion. "What does that mean?" "It means," Speaker Thrax said, his gaze sweeping across the assembled holograms, "that as of this moment the Terran Federation's entire diplomatic corps is under sanction. All their ambassadors, attachés, and aides on every council world and station are to be confined to their embassies. All diplomatic communications are severed, save for a single secure channel to this conclave. Their access to the Galactic Data Network is suspended. Their votes in this council are nullified. All pending treaties are frozen." He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. "It means that Ambassador Alina Vasquez and her staff are now prisoners in their own embassy. And it means that an independent tribunal, overseen by the Praetor AI, will be convened to investigate this incident. Until that tribunal delivers its verdict, for all intents and purposes, humanity has been silenced." The sterile negotiation chamber, now a crime scene under council seal, the red light on the console ceased its flashing. It was replaced by a steady, ominous amber glow. The main doors to the embassy complex sealed with a heavy, metallic thud that echoed through the corridors. On every monitor, the familiar swirling icon of the Galactic Data Network was replaced by a stark, unadorned symbol, a Greek letter omega bracketed by two vertical lines. "Quarantine." Marcus Thorne stared at it, his blood running cold. "My God, Alina, what have you done?" Vasquez, for the first time, looked truly taken aback. Her face was pale, her composure finally cracking. She walked towards the main viewport which looked out upon the orbital docks of Mars. "They wouldn't dare," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "This is a political power play. They're using Kethmer's weak heart as an excuse to sideline us." "An excuse you handed them on a silver platter," Marcus shot back, his fear finally boiling over into anger. "I warned you. I told you that the Zephyrians were different. That honor and harmony weren't just words to them, they were biological imperatives. You went after his honor, you called his entire species weak. You might as well have put a phaser to his chest." "Don't be hysterical, Marcus," she snapped, her composure returning like a steel shield slamming into place. "This is a negotiation that went sideways. It's not the end of the world." "Isn't it?" he asked, gesturing wildly at the Omega symbol on the screen. "We're cut off, Alina, from Earth, from the other embassies, from everything. Protocol Omega, they teach it at the Academy as a cautionary tale, a relic. No one thought they would ever actually use it." A chime sounded from the main console. A text-only message appeared on the screen below the Omega symbol, message from Office of the Speaker, Galactic Council Citadel 2. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, Terran Federation subject. Invocation of Protocol OMEGABY Order of the Galactic Council. Effective immediately, all diplomatic personnel of the Terran Federation are hereby PLACED under Level 1 quarantine. Your accreditation is suspended. You are to remain within your DESIGNATED embassy grounds. All external COMMUNICATONS are TERMINATED. A single secure channel to the Council conclave is now active. A formal tribunal is CONVNED. You will be contacted shortly. Do not attempt to breach quarantine. Compliance is mandatory. Vasquez read the message twice, her lips a thin, hard line. The calculated confidence had evaporated, replaced by a cold, simmering fury. She had played a game of high-stakes poker and had just been told the entire casino was being shut down with all her chips on the table. "So," she said softly, turning away from the console. "They want to play hardball, fine." She looked at Marcus, her eyes glinting with a dangerous fire. "They think they can silence me. They think they can silence humanity. They are about to find out how wrong they are." In the silence of their gilded cage, surrounded by the unblinking Omega symbols, her words sounded less like a threat and more like the desperate defiance of someone who had just realized they were utterly, terrifyingly alone. The silence of the Sol System embassy was a living thing. It pressed in on the small human delegation, thick and suffocating. For 48 standard hours, they had been ghosts in their own headquarters. The embassy, usually a bustling hub of activity, was now a tomb. The local staff had been sent home. The communication arrays were dark. The only sound was the faint, ever-present hum of the life support systems, and the maddeningly steady amber glow of the Omega quarantine symbols on every screen. Elena Vasquez stood before the main viewport, a glass of water in her hand. She hadn't slept. Her usual immaculate appearance was slightly frayed at the edges. A stray strand of black hair had escaped her severe bun, and there were faint, dark circles under her eyes. She stared out at the stardusted blackness, at the distant, glittering jewel of Earth. So close, yet a universe away, Marcus found her there. He carried 2 nutrient paste packets, the bland emergency rations they were now subsisting on. He held one out to her. "You need to eat something, Elena." She didn't turn. "Food is irrelevant. Information is what we need. What's the latest chatter from the internal sensors? Any subspace fluctuations? Any sign they're trying to listen in?" "The embassy is sealed tighter than a coffin," Marcus said, his voice weary. He had spent the last 2 days running internal diagnostics, a pointless task to keep his mind from spiraling. No unauthorized signals in or out. "We're in a complete blackout, just like the protocol says. The only thing I have is the medical update on Kethmer. It was pushed through the official channel an hour ago. He's been transported to the Citadel's primary medical facility. Condition is still listed as critical but stable. He's in an induced coma to allow his cardiac systems to recover." "Stable," Vasquez mused, turning the word over in her mind. "Stable is good. If he dies, I'm a murderer. If he recovers, I'm just an overzealous negotiator. The narrative hinges on that single, fragile heartbeat." She finally turned to face him, her eyes sharp and analytical. "This isn't just about Kethmer, Marcus. This is a pretext. The Council has been looking for a way to curb humanity's expansion for decades. We're too fast, too ambitious. We don't adhere to their ancient, stagnant traditions. We innovate, we disrupt, and it terrifies them." "Maybe," Marcus countered, his patience worn thin. "They just don't appreciate having their senior diplomats bullet into cardiac arrest. Maybe this is exactly what it looks like, a consequence." "There are no consequences in politics, Marcus, only maneuvers," she retorted. "This protocol, Omega, it's a brilliant move, I'll grant them that. It doesn't declare war. It doesn't make us martyrs. It just removes us from the board. It silences us while they rearrange the pieces to their liking. The Eskar will be falling over themselves to renegotiate our trade pacts. The Lithoids will use this as proof of the inherent chaos of organic life, and the Zephyrians get to play the victim on a galactic stage. And what do we get to play? We are the wrongly accused, fighting for our right to be heard," Vasquez said, a spark of her old fire returning. "When they finally open that channel, they're expecting contrition, apologies, begging. They will get none of it. They will get logic, reason, and a mirror held up to their own hypocrisy." As if on cue, the central console in the main atrium chimed. It was a different tone from the alert, a deep, resonant sound. The Omega symbol on the screen dissolved, replaced by the swirling, multifaceted emblem of the Council Speaker's office. A new message appeared: "Secure channel open. Speaker THRAX will address you. Prepare yourself." Vasquez straightened her jacket, tucked the stray hair back into place, and smoothed her expression into one of cool, unassailable professionalism. She strode to the console, Marcus trailing in her wake like a nervous shadow. "Showtime," she murmured. The screen flickered, and the towering, insectoid form of Speaker Thrax materialized in shimmering blue light. The fidelity was perfect. Vasquez could see the intricate patterns on his chitinous plates, the deep, ancient wisdom in his thousand-lensed eyes. He was not in the conclave, but in his private chambers, the star-map ceiling swirling slowly above him. The setting was intentionally intimate, and therefore infinitely more intimidating. "Ambassador Vasquez," his voice resonated, a sound that was felt as much as it was heard. It carried no anger, no judgment, only an immense crushing weight of authority. "Speaker Thrax," Vasquez replied, her tone perfectly even. "This is an unexpected and, I must say, unprecedented situation. I trust Ambassador Kethmer is receiving the best of care." Thrax said. "His life is in the hands of our finest physicians and the great cosmic flow. The matter of his health, however, is now secondary to the health of the Galactic Compact, which you have grievously injured." "I was engaged in a robust negotiation, Speaker," Vasquez countered, shifting immediately to the defensive. A practice humanity has been encouraged to pursue. We were told to integrate, to participate fully in the galactic economy. That is what I was doing. There is a line between robust and destructive, Ambassador, Thrax said, his multifaceted eyes seeming to look right through her. You wield information as a weapon. You identify psychological frailties and exploit them without mercy. The record of your negotiation with Ambassador Kethmer has been reviewed. The biotelemetry from the room is damning. You systematically induced a state of extreme physiological distress in him. I presented factual data about the Zephyrian Consortium's history of capitulation. If the truth caused him distress, that is a matter for him and his people, not for me. Marcus, standing just out of the hologram's direct line of sight, buried his face in his hands. She was doubling down. It was strategic suicide. Thrax remained silent for a long moment, a tactic Vasquez herself often used. When he spoke again, his voice was softer but carried a new, harder edge. The Zephyrian concept of Shulkira does not translate well into your tongue. It is a fusion of personal honor, ancestral legacy, and spiritual integrity. To attack it is not merely an insult. For a Zephyrian of Kethmer's age and standing, it is a physical assault. You did not simply cite his history, you attacked the very core of his being. You knew his species' fragility. The record shows your aid warned you. You chose to proceed. I chose to secure the best possible outcome for the 150 billion human beings I represent, Vasquez said, her voice rising slightly. My duty is to them, not to the delicate sensibilities of one individual. Duty is to the galactic compact that guarantees humanity's existence as an interstellar power. Thrax boomed, the psionic force of his voice making the air in the embassy vibrate. A compact built on mutual respect, understanding, and a careful observance of boundaries. You have not just crossed a boundary, Ambassador. You have set it on fire. He paused, his form seeming to loom larger. The tribunal will proceed. The Praetor AI will serve as an impartial arbiter. It will analyze the full, unedited record of the negotiation. It will analyze your diplomatic history. It will analyze the medical data. It will hear testimony. We will start with your aide, Marcus Thorne. Vasquez's eyes widened fractionally. Marcus felt a jolt of pure ice in his veins. Marcus Thorne is my subordinate. He will not be testifying, Vasquez stated flatly. Under the Articles of Protocol Omega, all members of a quarantine delegation are wards of the Council, Thrax corrected her calmly. He is no longer your subordinate, Ambassador. He is a material witness. He will be summoned. He will testify, as will you. Leaned forward, his great head filling the screen. I will give you a piece of advice, Elena Vasquez, not as speaker, but as a being who has watched empires rise and fall like the turning of the tide. Abandon your arrogance. It will not serve you here. The Praetor is a logic engine. It cannot be bullied, it cannot be intimidated, and it cannot be deceived. It will analyze the facts and it will render a judgment. That judgment will determine the future of your species' place in this galaxy for the next century. Contemplate that. The connection severed, leaving the Omega symbol burning once more on the screen. Vasquez stood frozen for a long moment, her jaw clenched so tightly that the muscles in her neck stood out in sharp relief. Then she turned to Marcus, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and something else, something he had never seen in her before, fear. They're trying to turn you against me, she hissed. They want you to be the reasonable human, the one who condemns my actions so they can justify punishing all of us. Marcus looked back at her, his own fear solidifying into a cold, hard resolve. He had idolized this woman, feared her, and followed her, but Thrax's words had landed like hammer blows of truth. What do you want me to do, Elena? He asked, his voice quiet but firm. Lie. Perjure myself before a council tribunal, for what? To defend an action that was indefensible, to defend your people, to defend our future. Our future is in jeopardy because of what you did, he shot back, his voice finally cracking with the strain. Don't you see that? You talk about maneuvers and power plays, but this isn't a game anymore. An old man is lying in a coma, and the entire galaxy thinks we are reckless, dangerous barbarians. And right now, looking at you, I'm not sure they're wrong. Her face fell, the anger draining away to be replaced by a stark, chilling emptiness. She had lost him. the one person in this sealed-off hell who was on her side, and she had lost him. "You will do your duty, Marcus," she said, her voice a hollow echo of its usual command. He replied, meeting her gaze without flinching. "I will." He turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the silent atrium, a queen on a chessboard that had been swept clean, with only one move left to make. The tribunal was not held in a grand chamber, but in the abstract, non-space of a secure neural link. Marcus Thorne found himself in a virtual environment that resembled a calm, gray void, featureless and infinite. Before him floated a single, perfect sphere of white light. This was the Praetor AI. There were no judges, no jury, only the pure, dispassionate presence of the Council's ultimate arbiter. Witness Marcus Thorne, Terran Federation Diplomatic Corps. A synthesized voice echoed in the void, calm and genderless. "Your testimony is required. You are under oath to the Galactic Compact. The penalty for falsehood is permanent neurological exile from the Galactic Data Network. Do you understand?" I understand," Marcus stammered, his heart pounding in his chest. "State your relationship with Ambassador Elena Vasquez. Is my direct superior. I have served as her senior attaché for the past 3 standard years. Describe her standard negotiation methodology." Marcus hesitated. This was the precipice. Ambassador Vasquez believes in thorough preparation. She studies her counterparts extensively, their political histories, their economic vulnerabilities, their cultural pressure points. "Cultural pressure points," the Praetor's voice requested, with no change in inflection. "Aspects of a species' culture or psychology that can be leveraged to achieve a desired outcome," Marcus said, the words tasting like ash. "Areas of pride or shame, past failures, deep-seated fears." This methodology considered standard practice within the Terran Federation Diplomatic Corps. "No," Marcus said immediately. "It is her signature style. Many at the Academy teach a more collaborative approach. Ambassador Vasquez's methods are results-oriented, and she has consistently delivered results that have benefited the Federation. Until now," he thought. "The tribunal has reviewed the full audio and biotelemetry log from the negotiation with Ambassador Kethmer," the Praetor stated. "The data indicates a continuous and escalating application of psychological stress upon Ambassador Kethmer, concurrent with a steady rise in his vital sign indicators for cardiac distress. At 3 distinct points, your own biometric signature registered significant alarm. The first was when Ambassador Vasquez brought up the Genar trade dispute. A holographic representation of the telemetry appeared in the void. Kethmer's life signs, a jagged red line, spiked sharply. Marcus's own, a blue one, wavered. "What was the cause of your alarm, Witness Thorne?" "I felt it was an unnecessary and dishonorable tactic," Marcus said, his voice gaining strength. "She was reframing an act of peacekeeping as an act of cowardice. It was a profound insult to Zephyrian culture." Second spike in your alarm signature occurred when she referenced the Cathar pirates. It was the same. She was painting a portrait of the Zephyrians as a weak, ineffective people, incapable of defending themselves. It was designed to undermine Ambassador Kethmer's confidence and his standing. And the third, and most significant, spike in your alarm signature occurred just before Ambassador Kethmer's collapse, when Ambassador Vasquez stated he was part of a foundation that crumbled under pressure. I tried to warn her. Subtly, I sent her a private text alert through our internal comms. I told her his biosigns were in the danger zone. I advised immediate de-escalation. "Log confirms this communication," the Praetor said. "It also confirms she viewed the message and ignored it. In your professional opinion, Witness Thorne, was Ambassador Vasquez's conduct the direct cause of Ambassador Kethmer's medical crisis?" This was it. The question that would seal his own fate and perhaps that of his species. He could prevaricate. He could talk about correlation and pre-existing conditions. He could give the answer Vasquez would want him to give. Or he could give the truth. He took a deep breath. "The Zephyrians are a delicate species. We've known that for a century. Their physiology is inextricably linked to their emotional state. Harmony for them isn't a poetic ideal. It's a biological necessity. Ambassador Vasquez created an environment of extreme psychological hostility and shame. She targeted the very essence of his identity. In my opinion, yes. Her actions were the direct cause. A silence descended on the gray void. "Your testimony is recorded," the praetor finally said. "You have fulfilled your obligation. This session is concluded." The world dissolved, and Marcus found himself back in his own quarters in the embassy, gasping for air as if he had just surfaced from a deep dive. He felt drained, hollowed out, but also strangely clean. He had told the truth. Whatever came next, he would face it with a clear conscience. Next, it was Vasquez's turn. When she entered the neural link, she did not see a calm, gray void. The praetor adjusted the environment to the psychology of the witness. Her space was a perfect replica of the negotiation chamber where Kethmer had collapsed. The obsidian table gleamed. An empty chair sat opposite her. The attention to detail was flawless and utterly unnerving. "Ambassador Elena Vasquez," the synthesized voice stated. "That title has been suspended, has it not?" she replied, her voice dripping with ice. "Your legal designation remains. The testimony of Marcus Thorne has been entered into the record. He asserts that your actions were the direct cause of Ambassador Kethmer's incapacitation. How do you respond?" "Attaché Thorne is an idealistic, junior officer who mistakes emotionalism for ethics," Vasquez said coolly. "He lacks the strategic perspective to understand the necessities of high-level diplomacy. His opinion is noted but irrelevant." "Biotelemetry is not an opinion. It is data," the praetor countered. "The data shows a clear pattern of aggression on your part, met with escalating physiological distress on his. You were alerted to this distress and chose to intensify your methods. Explain your reasoning." "My reasoning was sound," Vasquez stated, leaning forward and placing her hands on the holographic table. "I was negotiating for humanity's access to a resource critical for our next century of development. Ambassador Kethmer represented a culture of stagnation. My objective was to break through that stagnation. Diplomatic pressure is the primary tool for such a task. The fact that his physiology was unequal to that pressure is a tragic incompatibility, not a malicious act on my part. A stronger being would have parried my arguments. He did not. You suggesting that biological fragility is a diplomatic liability that may be exploited to the point of physical harm." "I am suggesting," Vasquez said, her eyes glinting, "that in a galaxy of countless species with wildly different biologies, to hold one species accountable for the inherent weakness of another is illogical. Should a lithoid be punished for speaking too forcefully to a xylosian, causing its containment suit to fracture? Should a escar be censured for its natural predatory scent distressing a prey species? We cannot legislate biology. We can only pursue our objectives. My objective was a treaty. His collapse was an unintended collateral consequence. It was a brilliant, amoral argument. It was pure, ruthless logic designed to appeal to an AI. She was attempting to negotiate with the tribunal itself. The concept of collateral consequence is typically applied to military action, not diplomatic negotiation, the praetor observed. You are framing a council chamber as a battlefield. It not, Vasquez shot back. We battle for resources, for influence, for the survival and prosperity of our people. We simply use words instead of warships. The stakes are the same. The Zephyrians were prepared to let a vital resource languish out of superstition. I fought for progress, for the future. If the Council chooses to punish humanity for its ambition, for its drive, then it is not a council of equals. It is a club for the old and the tired, dedicated to preserving a galactic status quo that no longer serves the living. She fell silent, her chest rising and falling. It was her closing argument, her justification, her defiance. The perfect white sphere of light materialized above the table. Your testimony and your philosophical justification are recorded, the praetor said. The tribunal has all necessary data. The final variable is the state of Ambassador Kethmer. The verdict will be rendered upon a definitive change in his medical condition, either his full recovery or his death. Until then, the quarantine remains. This tribunal is in recess. The holographic room vanished, and Elena Vasquez was alone again in the silent atrium. She had made her case. She had laid her cards on the table. Now all she could do was wait, a prisoner of another being's life signs, her entire career and her species' future hanging on the faint, rhythmic beat of a broken heart light years away. A week passed. Then another. The silence in the Sol system embassy became a form of psychological torture. The initial shock and anger gave way to a gnawing, dreadful monotony. Marcus and Vasquez avoided each other. He spent his time reading classical literature from Earth's history. She spent hers pacing the length of the atrium, a caged predator wearing a groove in the floor. The verdict came without warning. The consoles all chimed at once, the deep, resonant tone of the speaker's office. Marcus and Vasquez converged on the main screen in the atrium, standing several feet apart, a gulf of silence and recrimination between them. The face of Speaker Thrax appeared, but this time he was flanked by the holograms of the other senior council members. It was a formal assembly. The tribunal has reached a verdict, Thrax announced, his voice echoing with finality. 2 hours ago, Ambassador Kethmer awoke from his medically induced coma. His prognosis is for a slow but near-full recovery. His survival has allowed the council to choose a path of censure rather than outright condemnation. Vasquez's shoulders relaxed fractionally. Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Kethmer was alive. War had been averted. The Praetor AI has delivered its findings, Thrax continued, his gaze locking onto Vasquez. It concludes that you, Elena Vasquez, did knowingly and willfully employ methods of psychological aggression against a diplomat of a known fragile species, resulting in grievous bodily harm. It concludes that this action constitutes a catastrophic breach of the Galactic Diplomatic Code. It concludes that your justification for these actions is predicated on a philosophy incompatible with the principles of the Galactic Compact. He paused, letting the indictment hang in the air. Therefore, the Council renders the following judgment. 1. Elena Vasquez, you are hereby permanently stripped of your diplomatic rank and accreditation. You are barred for life from serving in any capacity that involves interaction with the Galactic Council or its member species. You will be returned to Earth on the next transport and remanded to the custody of your own government for their internal review. It was a career execution. Vasquez stood perfectly still, her face pale but impassive. 2, Thrax went on, his voice like the tolling of a great bell. The Terran Federation is placed on formal probation for a period of 5 standard years. During this time, your voting rights in the Council are reduced by half. All treaties involving resource or territorial negotiations will be subject to mandatory oversight by a neutral third party. Any further breach of the diplomatic code by any human representative will result in the immediate and indefinite extension of these sanctions. It was a leash, short and strong, placed around the neck of humanity's ambition. The proposed Cerulean Drift Treaty is declared null and void. The matter will be tabled for a period of no less than 10 years, to allow for a full cultural and environmental impact study to be conducted by a joint Zephyrian Council commission. The prize she had fought so hard for, the reason for the entire debacle, was gone. And 4, Thrax said, his gaze shifting to Marcus. Attaché Marcus Thorne, your testimony was deemed truthful and vital to the tribunal's understanding. In recognition of your adherence to the principles of the Compact over personal loyalty, the Council recognizes you as the interim chargé d'affaires for the Terran Federation. You will be the sole point of contact for humanity's diplomatic affairs until your government appoints a new ambassador. The quarantine on the Sol system embassy is lifted, effective immediately. Your first duty will be to oversee the departure of citizen Elena Vasquez. The holograms vanished. The Omega symbols on every screen dissolved, replaced by the familiar, swirling icon of the Galactic Data Network. The silence was broken by the distant, welcome sound of the embassy's outer doors unsealing. Freedom. Marcus stood stunned, the weight of his new, unwanted responsibility crashing down on him. He was in charge. He, the junior aide, was now the voice of humanity in the galaxy. He looked at Vasquez. She was no longer Ambassador Vasquez. She was just a citizen, a disgraced citizen. For the first time, he saw not a ruthless predator or a brilliant strategist, but a woman who had lost everything. Her mask of composure was gone, replaced by a look of profound, hollow emptiness. So, she said, her voice a dry rasp. You won. Nobody won, Elena, Marcus said softly, the words filled with a deep, weary sadness. We all lost. You lost your career. I lost my mentor. and humanity lost a decade of progress and a universe of trust. She gave a short, bitter laugh. Trust? They were never going to trust us, Marcus. We're too different. Maybe, he said, walking towards the main viewport and looking out at the stars, which now seemed impossibly vast and intimidating. Or maybe we just haven't tried hard enough to be trustworthy. A security detail of council peacekeepers, 2 stoic lithoids, entered the atrium, their crystalline forms gliding silently across the floor. They stopped a respectful distance from Vasquez. "Citizen Vasquez," one of them stated in its monotone voice. "Your transport is ready. Please come with us." She gave Marcus one last look, a complex expression of anger, pity, and a flicker of something that might have been grudging respect. Then she turned and walked towards the peacekeepers, her back ramrod straight, a defeated monarch being led into exile. Marcus watched her go. Then he turned back to the stars. The diplomatic channel to Earth was open. He had a report to file. He had to explain how their most formidable ambassador had been broken, and how he, in her place, was now expected to pick up the pieces of a shattered reputation. The task was monumental, perhaps impossible. But as he looked out into the great, waiting darkness, he knew he had to try. The silence from the galaxy was no longer a quarantine. It was a challenge. And for the first time, humanity would have to answer it not with aggression, but with humility.